What you're going to need for this tutorial is the following: green army clay, scissors, a cutter, a cylinder, water, and a sculpting device. This is the type of racing jacket that we will be making today. It has a zipper with a V-shaped collar, these rolled up sleeves, and pockets as well. I'm also going to show you the older versions that I made a while ago. This is one of the very first models that I made. This is Nyla's racing jacket from my series Car Racers. You can also watch it on YouTube. It looks pretty roughed up. It also has like this very thick collar and these rolled up sleeves. Depending on the way you paint them, you can turn these jackets into whatever kind of jacket you would like. In case you don't have a sculpting device such as this one with a silicone end and a ball tip end, I don't know what it's called, you can always just use a paintbrush with a sturdier tip. You will be needing this in order to get into the smaller gaps of your LPS where your fingers just won't be able to reach. This is the clay that you're going to be needing. It's called the green stuff or the green army clay, I guess. You can get it on Amazon for about 12 euros. It contains two components, a green one and a blue one, and once the two components are mixed, they form a green mass, which hardens in about 1 hour. I would always cut off the middle part of the clay because the two components are already touching and it's most likely already hard, and we don't want any hard chunks in our clay later on. Depending on the way you paint them, you can turn these jackets into whatever kind of jacket you would like. Once the clay has hardened, you can always sand down your jackets. These are, for example, multiple molds that I already worked on before, and this is kind of like what your jackets look like. You can use it as a reference to also make your own. This is also how the belly area would look like. This is approximately how much clay you're going to be needing. Because the clay can at times stain your LPS, I recommend using a fake LPS body, and I would also recommend removing the head for easier access. You can always use water if you notice that your hands are sticking to the clay to make it less sticky. I would also recommend wetting the surface that you're working on. We're now going to flatten the clay, and it's important that you wet your cylinder as well so it doesn't stick to the clay. This is approximately the thickness that we're going for. After that, cut a rectangle out of the flattened clay. We are going to stick it to the LPS. You can always stretch out the clay if you notice that it might not be long enough. Over here, I'm always starting at the beginning of the leg and pressing the clay gently against the body so it has something to stick to. Once you've done that, you just wrap the clay around the LPS and you can always gently stretch it out so it fits around the entire body. I would recommend using the sculpting devices to get into the smaller areas. Before they can touch the clay, you should always wet them so they don't stick to it. In case your LPS has any excess clay around its body, you can use a box cutter to cut that part off. I would just gently wet it and make sure to dry it afterwards so it doesn't rust. Now we are going to be working on the V-shaped collar. Cut around the excess material around the neck. If you notice any chunks, such as these ones, you can always just press them down by using the blade. This is approximately how high the neckline should be, and we're now going to cut a symmetrical triangle in the middle. We're now going to move on to the sleeves, and we're going to need a rectangle the same thickness as the jacket. This is approximately how wide we want it to be. When sticking the strip of clay to the paw, start from the back and not from the front. Gently wrap it around the body as I'm showing over here. If you see that you have a lot of excess material left, you can always just cut it off. Use the sculpting device to stick the clay gently to the LPS. Press the strips together so they don't budge once they have dried. You're going to do the same step on the other side. This is kind of like what the sleeves would look like. We're now going to move on to the belt on the back of the LPS. you will need a longer strip for the back, and I always recommend starting from above. Don't press the clay too hard, so you'll be able to move it later on if you'd like to adjust it in any kind of way. Press the clay ends gently against the body. This is kind of like what the finished product will look like. You can now press the clay in general once more to make sure it actually sticks to the jacket. We are now going to move on to the collar, and you're going to cut another rectangular piece of clay and stick it at the beginning of the collar. Take the strip and wrap it around gently. Make sure to not press it against the clay just yet because we might have to cut any excess clay off. We are now going to move on to the zipper, and we're going to need a piece such as this one. Position the piece of clay as such and adjust it if necessary with the sculpting device. We are now going to create a small circle in the middle, as such. You can use the silicone end to make the edges a bit rounder. You can also create these small dents in the jacket, which are supposed to mimic the zipper, but unfortunately if you do paint them, they might disappear. You can create little indents at the edges of your jacket. I always mess this part up, and worst case scenario, you can always just paint over them. This is what the finished product looks like, and now I'm actually going to show you how to also remove it. Let the clay dry for approximately a day, then make slits at the back, the belly, and also the sleeves. Use any kind of sharp object to gently lift up the jacket. Now make sure not to rip the collars, such as I did over here, but that doesn't really matter because you can always just glue them back on. If the jacket has any rough edges, you can always just sand them down. The same thing goes for uneven spots as well. The jacket itself is very stretchy, and I always just use acrylic paint to paint it later on. This is the end of the tutorial. I really hope you guys could learn something new, and if you have any remaining questions, just write them down in the comment section. I will gladly answer all of them. Yeah, this is kind of like the behind the scenes of the second episode of Car Racers. We've got a lot of new molds joining us in the second episode. I really wanted to use a variety of new molds for the new racers because I thought like cats and dogs and just the main pipes could be a bit boring. Anyway, there will be a lot of DIYing left to do, but I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time because I do plan on posting a behind the scenes video again for the second episode, which will just involve a lot of DIYing. I still have to paint an entire house, make an alleyway, and maybe I'll do a tutorial on that too while I'm at it. Although it will be the first time I'm making something like this too, so yeah. Anyway, bye you guys!